Is Taylor Swift a witch? I am my own truth. I am my own moral compass. I am my own God, essentially. Everybody else can just kick rocks.
She's not seen as crazy as like Lady Gaga, or not as, she doesn't push the envelope as much as like Lady Gaga does, especially Lady Gaga with her fashion and her.
Some themes in this album are, as we already mentioned, there seems to be what could be interpreted as blasphemy, infidelity, killing or murder, drug use, alcohol abuse, profanity, revenge, animosity, being angry, holding grudges, all these sorts of things.
You could say it is a tortured poet.
Hello and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, not Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Sterling's not with us today. He is enjoying a beautiful beach vacation.
Somewhere in the world.
Somewhere in the world. You'll never know.
It's not Mars. We know that. It's in the world.
Yes, but Elon, he would probably want to go to Mars if you gave him the opportunity, so just send us a message.
Yeah, it probably would.
Anyway, today's message is, today's topic.
Episode.
Today's topic is Taylor Swift and her new album. Now, see if I can get this right.
Okay.
It's the Tortured Poets Department.
Yes.
Okay. So I keep getting this wrong.
Because of,
I keep on trying to call it the Tortured Poets Society, probably because of the Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, great movie.
And I can't help but think about
Robin Williams.
One of the best actors to have ever lived.
Yeah.
I have no idea if Taylor Swift was trying. I don't think she was. I think the name of the album is in reference to something her ex was involved in. Like her ex had some kind of text group called Tortured Men, something or another.
Which ex? She's got like
This
16.
is the British guy.
Okay.
I will say, just a small tangent, the second that I heard this play on words, I couldn't help but think about one of my favorite YouTubers, Administrative Results. And his first YouTube name was Executive Outcomes, and he had to change it to Administrative Results. So yeah, funny play on words. But anyway, back to Taylor Swift. You all probably know her. She is arguably one of the biggest celebrities in the world right now for her music.
This is like our second or third episode where we've kind of focused on her a bit, at least.
Yeah, we've talked about her, mainly her relationship with Travis Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs.
It worked out. I mean, they won the Super Bowl.
So far, she has not written a breakup album about him. It's just this one has breakup elements throughout from various other exes, of course. But yes, the Kansas City Chiefs did win the Super Bowl, so thank you, Taylor.
If you're a Chiefs fan, I mean, that's assuming.
Yes, exactly. But this latest album is wildly successful, because probably predictable. It came out, I think, last Friday. Today is about a week since it's come out.
Right, and it's set all kinds of records.
Yeah. It'll be 2 weeks by the time our episode today releases. It broke some records. Spotify, for example, I think it had the most plays in the shortest period of time. It's like 2 million plays in a day or something like that.
Yeah.
And also the first song on the album, which is titled Fortnite, featuring Post Malone, I think it was the most streams in a day in history.
So. Yeah. That's crazy.
So breaking all kinds of records. And there are some questions about this album in particular, some of the themes, some of them predictable, and maybe about the appropriateness of certain themes. Mainly, I would think, as it pertains to conservatives or Christians, really especially true for young women. I'm thinking teenage young women.
You're her biggest fans generally, right?
Mainly the people who listen to us. But we want to kind of dig into some of the themes that we're finding and sort of explore her as a phenomenon and compare the music industry and what we've seen unfold with her and with others throughout history, and let's just kind of dig into some of those, Thomas.
Okay. Sounds good.
So one in particular area that we all expected was there's a ton of break-up kind of themes and sort of animosity towards exes, it seems like.
That's kind of like her MO, is it not?
It is, yeah. But another area that is making a lot of headlines is the notion of blasphemy. And there's also a lot of really foul language in this album, which she's used foul language in the past, but this one seems to be a bit more than she has previously.
Okay.
But in particular, there are a few songs that are jumping out, and we were reading an article by Peter Heck. He wrote an opinion piece for Not the Bee, and it was titled Taylor Swift's latest album makes me wonder if she signed Satan as her chief lyricist. I don't know if that's true, but he's mentioning from some tweets from this guy on Twitter that says almost half the songs on Taylor's new album contain explicit lyrics, make fun of Christians, and straight up blaspheme God. And, maybe that's not, unexpected. The whole blaspheming God, knocking Christians, knocking religion, the church, that seems to be pretty popular in pop culture these days.
Yeah, it's been popular for a long time.
But I just wanted to read a few of these lyrics. For example, there's a song called Guilty as Sin, and Taylor says, what if I rolled a stone away? They're going to crucify me anyway. What if the way you hold me is actually what's holy? If long-suffering, propriety, is what they want from me, they don't know how you've haunted me so stunningly. I choose you and me religiously. Another song, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. I would have died for your sins. Instead, I just died inside. And then finally, another song, God Save the Most Judgmental Creeps, who say they want what's best for me, sanctimoniously performing soliloquies I'll never see, thinking I can change the beat of my heart when he touches me and counteract the chemistry and undo the destiny. You ain't gotta pray for me and my wild boy and all this wild joy. If all you want is gray for me, then it's just white noise. It's just my choice. And I'll read one last excerpt. I forgot how the West was won. I forgot if this was ever fun. I just learned these people only raise you to cage you. Sarah's and Hannah's in their Sunday best, clutching their pearls, singing, what a mess, or sighing, what a mess. I just learned these people try and save you because they hate you. So anyway, what do you think about those excerpts, Thomas, at face value?
I feel like I'm missing a lot of context, to be honest.
Yeah.
There are definitely, you could say, Christian elements or biblical elements that are kind of like referenced, seemingly critically or negatively, but without a greater context as to what she's meaning in the song. Like, we're just picking parts of the song. Those lyrics are just parts. So it's hard to say just outright, oh yeah, definitely this is definite blasphemy without understanding context. And I think that's key. I think, unfortunately, historically, I think this potential overreaction, I'm going to put it that way, to secular artists coming out with songs that seemingly are blasphemous or appear because of the way certain words are used or something like that. I'm always tapping the brakes on those kind of accusations, just because you have to kind of dig a little bit more to see, okay, what is it that some songs are really clear, and so maybe you can criticize. Others, it seems like I'm not quite sure what she's criticizing. What is her message here? The one that seemed the clearest was the last one you read, at least from what I got out of it. And it seems like she's responding to being criticized by kind of the religious goody two-shoe folks who are like judgment and, like, so you could say Christians, and she's just saying, I don't really, you say you have what's best for me, but really, I think it's disingenuous.
Yeah.
Does that exist? Yeah.
Sure.
So even if these people are being genuine, could it be interpreted by the other person as being judgmental? Yeah. So I'm not ready to just kind of say, yes, for sure, she's having her lyrics written by the devil.
Right. I think that's a fair assessment. I really think that most everything you see from her lyrics are right in line with, I guess, the secular culture narrative, which is, I am my own truth. I am my own moral compass. I am my own God, essentially. And if you tell me anything different, you are judgmental and terrible. And I'm going to follow my heart, and I'm going to follow my feelings, and everybody else can just kick rocks.
Yeah. I mean, famously, Frank Sinatra, I did it my way. I mean, this kind of theme of I'm my own person, my own boss, my own God, as you put it, has been around for a long time.
Sure.
In the, popular music.
Right.
And it's because, and the reason these songs are popular is they do hit a chord with people. People can identify with it. And I think maybe that's where the concern comes from some of the songs that she has produced. They know she has kind of cultivated an image, probably intentionally so, and it's probably not disingenuous either, that she's a relatively moral person.
Yeah, she is famously regarded as like this great influence for young women.
Right. And she's become popular kind of after my time. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Sure. Yeah. First album was like 2005 or 2006.
2006, I think. I think we looked that up. So I was, I did used to teach middle school. And so I was, for a time, somewhat up to date with what was popular at that time. And the big pop singers when I was teaching was like, they were coming up with like Katy Perry, Lady Gaga was getting big, Miley Cyrus was starting to get big. So, and even at that time, they were kind of on the periphery for me. I didn't go out of my way to listen to them. I just was kind of, because of where I was at, I was kind of immersed in some of that music because of my students.
Sure. On the peripheral. Anyway.
On the peripheral. And part of it, too, was country music wasn't a real big popular thing. And I think when she started out, she was kind of country music.
For sure.
And so that also may have been why I just never got that familiar with her.
Yeah.
And I don't have any children of my own, so they're not listening to stuff.
Yep. Didn't continue.
No. So kind of what it seems to me, at least, is she seems like a more put together version of those singers that I've just referenced. Yeah. She's not seen as crazy as like Lady Gaga, or she doesn't push the envelope as much as like Lady Gaga does, especially Lady Gaga with her fashion and her, and she's like Katy Perry was the kind of, teeny bopper kind of high school kind of image that she sings up in her a lot of her songs. But she pretty quickly, and Katy Perry was kind of, I remember she was controversial when she was coming up, but because she came out of a Christian background.
Right. Yeah. I think her dad's a pastor.
Right. And so I kind of remember this whole craze about when I want to say the song, I Kissed a Girl.
Yep. Was
like really big controversial at the time. And, we all kind of seen that Katy Perry, I don't think she calls herself a Christian.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think she sees herself as a religious person, but it's kind of one of those things where the popular or spiritual person, maybe that's the better way.
It's not religious, probably spiritual.
And I think that tends to be the popular way that a lot of these popular figures today, both in music and media, they like to, and I think they honestly are so they want to be spiritually connected in some fashion, but they also...
There's no denying that reality.
Right. But they also don't want to be boxed in, as I guess is the way they would see it, or given to a specific kind of religious sect as they would see it.
To them, it's more of a personal thing that they're not going to allow to interfere with their cultural and their career success. Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to be spiritual when you don't have to do anything about it.
Sure. Yeah. A theme that I've noticed with a few of these artists that you've talked about, and I think it's true with Taylor Swift, is something I've been calling the gingerbread house effect.
Okay.
And often they out the gate will be like these teeny bopper, fun, shallow, tame sorts of acts, not very provocative. But as they gain popularity, they become more and more pushing the envelope, more and more provocative, or their lyrics become darker. In the case of Taylor Swift, to a certain extent, lyrics kind of become darker or more, I guess, grown up in some ways within her.
More adult.
Yeah. Within her own worldview. But it captures young people from the output and then strings them along down this path with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost informs anyone you admire has the potential to impact the way you think.
Sure.
And I think that's probably what the concern has been, is like, well, how is she influencing a generation of, specifically, you could say girls, but I mean, it's bigger than that. But,
sure.
But primarily girls.
Yeah.
We did listen to that number one song from her latest album that was Fortnite, and very adult themed.
Yeah,
very much so, and very not positive.
Yeah, the whole thing, a scenario where she's cheating with the neighbor, her husband might be cheating with somebody, and there's animosity, and there's talking about wanting to kill people, and
yeah, it sounded like it was an affair that ended. Probably sounds like by the person she was having the affair with. The Fortnite, I think, references it only lasted like a fortnight.
Sure.
So it's a hot, steamy, fast thing that ends. But yet the emotion of it obviously is very much still there. Mm-hmm. And she is singing about that reality, that it's ended, and the feelings that are associated with that. Like I said, it's a very adult kind of theme, and not a positive one, you could say. You could say it is a tortured poet.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's true.
So some themes in this album are, as we already mentioned, there seems to be what could be interpreted as blasphemy, infidelity, killing or murder, drug use, alcohol abuse, profanity, revenge, animosity, being angry, holding grudges, all these sorts of things.
Bitterness.
Yes. Yeah. And there was an article I read recently about Taylor and her concerts. And, the Eras tour was a very huge, popular concert series that broke a bunch of records. And I expect that this album will ultimately result in another huge tour session or a series that will probably be as big or bigger than this Eras tour. And this author is Shannon K. Evans. She writes Taylor Swift and the Power of Archetype. And I just wanted to read one excerpt from her Substack, and I'll find it here. Okay, so attending the Eras tour is actually, no, one does not attend an Eras tour. One's immersed in a communal experience in a stadium of 70,000 people, actively participating on both individual and collective levels in something vastly outside of themselves. It's the reason this writer compares it to going to Mass, and why this writer says the church should take some notes, and why therapists all over the country are having to learn Swiftese, kind of like Vietnamese, like her language, in order to work with their clients. And so I think why the criticism is coming out, of course, and there has always been criticism for this stuff. Madonna was criticized, Britney Spears, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry. All these people have been criticized by more conservative or religious or Christian circles of being bad influences. But I think this seems to be particularly concerning for some people, as just the power of Taylor's ability to capture these audiences in such a material way, and comparing going to a concert almost like a religious experience, going to a mass or a religious experience or a religious service, and then all of these themes being used, such as blasphemy and all the other negative worldview kind of things, is why there is concern about her being a bad influence over young women, because young women are her number one fans.
Yeah, I think that while this writer seems to think this is unique to Taylor Swift, I would push back and say I think this has been an element that has existed since rock and roll has existed.
Fair enough.
I think that what she's hitting at when she talks about mass and the church should take notes. Well, what is it that she's feeling? She's saying she was experiencing, you could say, an emotional high that was collective.
Sure.
Which can be an element of worship, right? When the congregants are coming together to worship God, our focus isn't upon ourselves. Our focus is upon Christ and what he's done, and we're worshiping him and we're singing to his glory, and we're connected to that because the reason he came to earth was to save us.
Sure.
So where there's obviously emotional elements that are attached to that. In a similar sense, when you're at a concert where you're being brought up emotionally, where you're connecting with everyone around you in this kind of mass emotional event, it can have a religious feel to it, I think. And obviously she's very gifted as a entertainer, and music naturally is the language of emotion. You know, the reason there's soundtracks in movies is because it can lend to what we're seeing, the emotional impact that the movie might want the audience to feel at their different points. Like if you want an audience to feel tension, you can use music to do that.
Sure. And then when you combine that with lyrics, it's like putting into words what everyone feels but doesn't know how to say.
Yeah, and I think too I think what may be kind of interesting with Taylor Swift, because this is something I don't know if we talked about on here before, but we have talked about it just outside of here. In the internet age we're in, everything has seemed to become so atomized or broken up. Like when you were growing up as a kid in like the 80s or the 90s, you know, the internet was just getting going in the 90s, but there was TV and TV shows that were popular, and then there was artists that were popular. And it's almost like the whole community or the whole country experienced that. And so these stars were stars, not just in one city or in one location or in one age group, but they were kind of, for lack of a better term, universal. Everybody knew who Michael Jackson was, right? The king of pop. What's happened as we've kind of gone to this age where music, you can get online and listen to a specific genre of music, and there's certain stars within that specific genre, and a lot of other people will never hear them. Taylor Swift may be kind of one of the rare examples where she's gotten so big that it's almost like one of those old stars, you know, like Madonna was back in the day or something like that. So in that sense, this writer is saying experiencing that is for her and her generation something that I could say other generations experience with some of the other rock stars. Like I can still see like live clips like on YouTube or something from like Guns N' Roses. And Guns N' Roses, and I just point that out because I was like a middle schooler when they were like coming up, and I'm just, when you're young, whatever's popular can really have an impact on you.
Of course. Yeah.
And there's still some nostalgic factors to that come through. It's weird. I can't quite define it, but I can still feel it. I'm like, yeah, that was like, in my mind, the concerts that they were putting on and the feel that you get from those, I don't see anybody doing that today.
No.
It's unique to that. They were huge then. Now, would a young person today hearing Guns N' Roses or something like have the same experience? I would say no. I don't think so. In some ways it's based upon your.
It's like connecting with a generation.
Exactly. So part of me feels like that's what she is for a generation. She's kind of like the pop icon for them. Sure. And there's not going to be anybody that's going to maybe in their lifetime come close to what she is. Yeah. So when she writes like that and says it's like this massive, almost like a religious experience, I'm not trying to rain on her parade. I'm like saying that's not new. Okay. I feel like that's something that's kind of existed look at those old clips of when the Beatles come to town and the girls are just losing their minds.
Yes. Like falling out of their chairs, screaming
And stuff and you're kind of like, really?
Well, and you see some footage from Taylor Swift concerts that are like that. You'll see, there's one in particular that I saw recently. It was this probably 11-year-old girl had gone with her mom. And then Taylor Swift comes out on stage singing, and this the child just starts like sobbing and singing at the same time, perfect word for word at the top of her lungs, the stuff that Taylor Swift, one of her big songs, and it was just remarkable to me to see that control. But I guess you're right, Thomas, it's not necessarily a new phenomenon. It has always been this way of music and celebrity and group experience to take your emotions and run with them.
Yeah. I mean, emotions are one of those things that get us in so much trouble, but they're so important to our life. But the trouble is when you let the emotions guide you rather than guide your emotions.
And I think that is one of the big takeaways from the things that Taylor Swift sings about.
Yeah.
And her worldview is all about letting those emotions and self-direction be your guiding light.
Yeah. And interestingly, when you like that even the one song we just talked about, the number one so far from her latest album, what's interesting even in that song is the contradictory elements.
Yeah.
So you can see that she's singing about this emotional experience in regards to this fortnight affair that has ended, and anger is represented, depression is represented, wanting it back. Yeah, and there's just so many. And as a human being, we all can kind of relate to those emotions, and they're illogical often. That is one of the things with emotions. Emotions, there's a logic in the sense of the emotions connect to things, but they're not connected to reality logically. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And that's why that's why you don't want them to guide you. But unfortunately, we have for a long time, this is multiple generations now, have been told, follow your heart. Well, what that's code for is follow your emotions.
Yeah. The heart is fickle.
It is. And it's a liar.
Sure.
I mean,
100%.
Yeah. So it's like she's exploring the themes. I don't know if she's the few songs that I've looked at. What I've read up on her, she loves being a songwriter, maybe even first. I mean, that's like kind of how she really started to go. When she first started getting into it, she kind of focused more on the writing after she didn't quite, I think when she was young, she did some kind of a demo and it got rejected.
Yeah. And she has, to give credit where credit's due, she is an incredible songwriter.
Yeah, well, I think she leaned into that. I want to say it probably helped focus her on that a little bit more, maybe, because I think her demos were of covers and they just weren't considered that great.
Yeah,
at the time, and she was like 13 or 14.
Yeah, she was a kid.
So I think that this album is probably aptly named. She is a poet. She loves the poetry, and poetry is emotional expression in language.
Sure. Right?
When we read the Psalms, you read the Psalms and their emotions very raw in a lot of the Psalms, right? And sometimes the Psalms seem at times almost emotionally contradictory. I'm feeling terrible. And then it turns on a verse, praise God for he's so good. You can have these kind of like dramatic emotional kind of shifts because you're wrestling with things. And so as she's writing her songs and as she's singing her songs, I think she's expressing those types of things. So
wrestling with the feelings and the experiences of life.
Yeah. And I think that's fine. Yeah. I do think though, like you said, well, what is the overall message? One song that I think was on her album prior to this one, which is called Karma.
Yeah.
In that one, there's a lot of problematic, I think, themes or the message from it is problematic.
And that album is Midnights, by the way.
Is that your second favorite?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's my second favorite.
Yeah, it's good. So you know that song, Karma?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I listen to it every single day
Really?
on the way to work. Just kidding.
I mean, I think that what the message that someone could take away from that is that karma is real. One, she even sings it in the song "Karma is God."
Yeah,
which is it is in some cultures. You know, we reject that notion, but so
to a lot of people that is
right. And you know, the Western version of karma is kind of fascinating, but that's kind of what she's singing into, and it's kind of one of those also breakup type of songs. You're gonna regret what you've done because it's gonna come back around on you,
right?
You know,
and that's like her vindictive unforgiveness that comes through in a lot of this. I know it's karma, but it is also like holding on to stuff. It's an unforgiveness.
Yeah, bitterness.
I think referring back to Peter Heck again, and from Not the Bee, he summarizes the message pretty well, in my opinion.
Okay.
And that is, I'm my own God. I make my own rules. I follow my own heart. I get what I want.
That's a good, yeah. I think maybe that in a nutshell is what kind of her, but that is the message of secularism.
Sure.
That's the broad culture message right there. She's an element, or she happens to be a representation of the culture we are in today.
Yeah. Maybe somewhat of a pinnacle in her own right of what that represents.
Yeah.
That leads us to the question of the day.
What is that?
Thomas, is Taylor Swift a witch?
I don't.
She's a witch burner.
Is she made of wood?
How can it's like, what else floats? A duck. Is that your nose? No, it's not. It's a false one. They put it on me.
Such a great scene.
Sorry, I had to reference some Monty Pythons there. Yeah. There have been folks who have said maybe she is, particularly because of the almost like trance-like ritualistic things that happen in some of her concerts. But, you know, it's speculation. It's not, she's never said that she is. And I think it's more realistic just to say she is a great example of secularism.
Yeah, I would not say she's a witch. I mean, if you're going to be narrow, I think when you throw out that term, you need to define what you mean. But I would say witchcraft, delving into the evil spirits and all that. I don't know her well.
Sure.
But I haven't ever read anything that would suggest that she's actually engaged in that kind of activity. So I would say, no, I don't think she's a witch.
Yeah. It would be a little easier to draw that conclusion with others such as Sam Smith or Little Nas X.
Yeah. Now they're seemingly wanting to push the boundary so hard that they are mocking Christianity and
like overtly.
Yeah. And the most overtly way to do that is for them to embrace like abject satanistic imagery and stuff in their songs and dances and stuff.
Yeah, I think some of the lyrics that Taylor uses, such as, you know, I'll refer back to, what if I roll the stone away? They're going to crucify me anyway. You know, those are using elements of Christianity for repurposing. But, you know, is that mocking? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not having the greater context of that song. I'm not quite sure what she's suggesting. Obviously, it seems she's using elements of Christianity in the resurrection, obviously, in the crucifixion. And it seems like she's taking on this kind of like Christ-like identity, but at the same time, she's rejecting it, at least from those few lyrics that I see here.
Sure.
So, you know, I do think that popular people can get a sense of either a savior complex or people look at them like their savior. Maybe that's what she's responding to. You know, like you were just saying, the little girl just starts crying, and the emotional response to a celebrity of that size. That's got to be quite I can't imagine someone responding to me like that.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that has got to do a number on you, just
like your self-perception.
Self-perception, especially because you know deep down you're not God.
Of course, yeah.
You know you're not some superhero kind of that deserves these types of accolades. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might be really good at your craft, whatever that may be, and people may enjoy that and stuff. But when it comes to the level that people are almost like worshiping you, and maybe that's what she's almost saying, and in response of like, I'm not Jesus, don't worship me. I'm not God. Mm-hmm. it could be that's what she's trying to say. I don't know.
Sure.
Like I would have to see the greater context of the full song there. So I'm just part of me saying all this is because I remember, especially in the late 80s, there was so much concern from Christians about secular pop music and rock songs and stuff like that. And, let's just take the band AC/DC as an example.
Sure.
People were trying to say that AC/DC meant something like anti-Christian devil something.
Devil cult.
Devil cult. I mean, that might have been. And I'm like, well, what does actually AC/DC mean? They're both
alternating current, direct current.
Direct currents. It's electricity.
That's it. They have electric guitars, now, music electrifying.
And then they would point to stuff like, well, they sing the song Highway to Hell. Yeah.
Well, that's where they're going. If you're not following Jesus, it doesn't matter who you are.
They did sing about, songs that were very secular. And yes, given the nature of that song in particular.
When I was growing up, that came on one time. One of my friends, his dad, I remember he famously said, well, at least they know where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrible, but it's true. And I just think sometimes what's more damaging, you need to be aware of, but the broader culture that we're in, and in fact, our own sinful hearts is where our biggest problem is.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's this tendency to wanting to constantly push and point to other things out there. Yeah, when you're raising your kids, you want to protect them from bad influences, and I get that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. But what I am saying sometimes is sometimes Christians can fixate on some of these things out there and attribute, because
maybe
almost like a
not even true.
Yeah, almost like a knee-jerk reaction, like, "Ooh, that sounded bad. That's really anti-Christian or something." And it's like, let's pump the brakes and let's actually understand first.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these artists, poets is what they are, poets that put their art to music, their poetry to music. They're trying to say something. And they're using these analogies lots of times. And scripture has a lot of that too, that they might glean from. A lot of them came out of some type of religious context. And so, I mean, if you would expect someone coming out of maybe a Muslim-dominated cultural context, they would probably reference stuff from the Quran or teachings of Islam because that was a cultural context in which they were. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Within our American culture, within the West especially, Christianity and Judeo-Christian concepts are the foundation upon which the West grew up. And so that references are made to that, either positively or negatively or not well, should be expected. That should not be shocking. Often, though, like I said, it might not be done well or something, and people aren't expecting to hear it. Or it is intended to do shock value. Just pump the brakes, try to figure out what they're saying, and maybe it's not quite as terrible as you initially think it is. Yeah. But it could be pretty bad too.
Yeah. Use discernment.
Yes.
And in this case, you'll have plenty of time to use discernment because it is a surprise double album.
Yeah.
So there's over 30 songs on this thing.
Man. How much of it you listened to?
Maybe half.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'll listen to the rest of it or not.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll just listen to it every single day for the rest of the year because I'm a Swiftie now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Our Swiftie is on the beach.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Sterling, our resident Swiftie, the real Swiftie, who has every single album in his personal collection signed.
Does he?
At the beach right now, listening to the new album.
He probably is
on repeat.
Probably is.
Well, any final takeaways, Thomas? I think we have covered most everything.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
so we'll
probably do another episode on her in the future. Who knows? I mean, she's
a cultural icon.
She is.
She's not going anywhere.
Maybe when her relationship with Travis Kelce goes either south or they get married. Who knows?
Yeah. Hopefully she'll just get married and then start writing songs that aren't about vindictive breakups and maybe explore some other. I mean, the things that she explores are interesting. She has a whole lot of literary references throughout all of her stuff. So it's not without interest or texture, But the themes, I don't know, they're a bit shallow for my taste.
She is young. She's what, 34?
Yeah, she's exactly my age. Well, by a few months. I was born September of 89.
Okay.
She was born December of 89.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think it's still probably stuck in my head impression of her as kind of like a teeny bopper.
That's how she started out.
It's how she started out. And I think that she's still so young as far as she's experienced.
She seems emotionally young.
Yeah. And maybe that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think that her fans probably are growing up with her at the same rate. It's kind of, you know what I'm saying? They relate, they have related to her and continue to relate to her because they're like grew up with her.
Sure.
So I get that, but I do think that there's kind of elements of immaturity there that, what will her music look like 10 years from now? Maybe she'll have gotten married, maybe she'll have a couple children. How will that impact her view on the world, her view on relationships? I mean, those are all things that, we'll see. I mean, it is true. I do think, I kind of do agree with you. There is an element of immaturity. I feel like just because she's young.
Yeah. And frankly, some people never grow up.
It's true. At least she made it past the 27 club.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't think she was ever concerned about that, but
probably not.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've covered Taylor Swift and her new Tortured Poets Department double album, over 30 songs, breaking records already. Little 11-year-old girls are screaming their heads off while listening to lyrics about blasphemy and drug abuse. And she, remember, is a great influence for young people. So I would say use discernment if you're going to listen to it. It's, in my opinion, it's just for adults. And
this latest album, yeah,
it's just for adults. And I would not necessarily think it would be the best for teenage girls. But parents out there, that's your decision. But we've talked about some themes in the album, some themes throughout the music industry, different icons and their arcs, the gingerbread effect, as I have called it, some of the religious themes.
You're trademarking that?
I'll go ahead and trademark it.
Okay.
Unless somebody else already has. Maybe the next album can be called the gingerbread effect. Taylor, I want my piece of that if you name your next album Gingerbread Effect. But yeah, I think that it's an interesting cultural phenomenon, and it's worth commenting on.
Yeah.
So this has been the Pop Culture Contrarian. We are brought to you by the Patriot Post, which is the oldest news, policy, and opinion digest on the web. PatriotPost.us is right. It is free. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later.
Bye.